for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock.
Welcome to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. My name is Clayton Craddock, and this is your one-stop shop for everything you'll need to know about playing drums for Broadway musicals. Today's podcast is a continuation of a conversation that I had with Q Robinson. He's the drummer for the first national tour of Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. In our conversation, he tells me about his love for theater, why he went from becoming an actor to playing drums in the pit of shows, and how he got the gig for the first national tour. Stay tuned.
Thank you for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. If you like what you hear on the show, subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter at broadwaydrumming101.substack.com. That's Substack, substack.com. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you'll have a backstage pass to the world of a Broadway drummer playing on a hit show. As a paying subscriber, you'll receive behind-the-scenes access to the life of a musician who makes a living on Broadway. You'll also be able to read every post, not just those occasional free ones. You'll get access to all newsletter issues in the archives and have an ability to participate in subscriber-only comments and events. If you become a founding member for a gift of only $75, you'll receive discounted private drum lessons, an opportunity to watch Clayton play in the pit of his show, and a 25% discount on future promotional products. If you'd like to make a direct contribution to the production of the show, you can reach us at Venmo at Clayton-Craddock, Cash App at Syncopated, that's CINCOPATED, or PayPal at Clayton Craddock. Any amount of support will be appreciated. Thank you for listening.
What makes you want to play Broadway?
Here's the thing. Music chose me when I was 3. I chose music theater when I was in middle school. A lot of people don't know, but I was at a performing arts high school for music theater as an actor. I was a thespian. So I've always had a deep love for the theater. But I didn't necessarily see a future in me being an actor. And to be quite honest, I did not even know that being a pit musician was a thing. You know, I'm from Miami. You know, it's not something that's first of all, you know, it's not something that's necessarily broadcasted. At least it didn't used to be. And I remember I was in middle school. I was the lead in the school play. And I was also moonlighting as the jazz band drummer. And they had rehearsals simultaneously. So I would go and do my scene work and then run to the band room and get a couple of songs in and then run back. And it just wasn't working. And the band director and the theater director cornered me in the hallway and was like, hey, you can't do both. You have to choose. In my 14-year-old brain, I heard you can't act and be a drummer. That's not what they were saying. They were saying you can't be Jim Hawkins in Treasure Island and be the jazz band drummer for this competition. You have to choose one of those. But as a 14-year-old kid, I heard one or the other. So I switched my concentration from theater to music simply because it was easier. Like I was doing it already, but I always loved the theater. So fast forward 2016, I get a random call from a friend of mine that can't do this theater show locally here in Atlanta. And it was for the B.B. Winans musical Born for This that was making its world premiere in Atlanta. Got a chance to work with some New York music directors and some choreographers. And that feeling that I had for theater, it just ignited again. But this time it was through the guise of sitting in a drum chair as opposed to being on the stage. And from that moment in 2016 until now, I have shifted my focus into becoming a Broadway drummer simply because it's now what I realize without knowing it, that it's always been a passion to play music theater. It's just something about it. I tend to romanticize things, but there is something that I love about the work and being a small cog in the wheel of a bigger thing, with musicals. You know, being the unseen engine in a musical. It, to me, it's fascinating. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, of course it did. Now I can't remember the connection that we had. Was it Rashidra?
It was Rashidra. So the choreographer for Born for This, which is Warren Adams, very prominent choreographer in New York. He's also a director, and a few years back, he was directing a new musical presentation at the Vineyard Theater, and Ain't Too Proud just had opened. It literally just had opened. It hadn't been open a month. And Rashidra was like, "What are you doing tonight?" I was like, "I think I want to go and see a musical." She was like, "What are you going to see?" I was like, "I want to go and see Ain't Too Proud."
Wait, so how did you meet her though?
She was one of the principals in the reading.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, when you're doing a reading, everybody's kind of in the same room. We're not separated.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because, you know, I got a chance to work with Joseph Joubert, which is incredible. Warren was there, and like we were so like, you know, those readings are high pressure. So for a week, you know, it's all like the people that are in that room are all you see for an entire week. And we connected, and she was like, "Don't leave. I want to introduce you to somebody." And she introduced me to you. However, a month before that, I was up here doing another reading, and Jeremy Yadal gave me your information. You were in Paris, and I reached out to you, and you were so gracious. You were like, "Hey, man, I'm in Paris, but when I get back to New York, next time you're in New York, make sure you connect with me." And a month later, I'm doing the show, not knowing that you were playing Ain't Too Proud. So it was kind of like a dual connection to the same person without even knowing it.
Interesting. Now it all makes sense. And I think I met you outside of the door of the theater after you saw it.
Yeah, well, it was cold, so they let us in.
Yes.
So we were right on the mezzanine, like right there.
Did I bring you downstairs that night, or
No. So what I found out is to ask to sit in someone's pit is to the unwritten rule of wanting to sub their show. I had no idea. I'm just a how the sausage is made type of guy. I just wanted to see what it was like in your world. And we had a conversation. He was like, "Hey, next time you come back, you can sit in the pit." I already got all of my 5 subs. And in my mind, that didn't even compute to me, simply because at the time I was like, I wasn't even thinking about trying to sub your show. I just wanted to see, you know, how the sausage was made, so to speak.
I mean, before you go on, that's what I did 21 years ago. I mean, I got my start playing a bus and truck tour of a show called Footloose, and we were in Las Vegas. But before I left, I wanted to just see what it was like playing drums in a Broadway pit, because I had no idea. I was, you know, in New York 8 years, and I just, you know, I'm doing something brand new. It's like, what do you do down there? So I called up a guy named Gary Seligson.
Yeah, I met Gary. I know Gary.
And he was doing Aida, and I just watched him play, and it was fascinating. It was fun. It's like, this is very cool. And this is what I wound up doing for the next 21 years to a certain degree, off and on. But, you know, when people do ask, you know, can I come down and watch you play? I'd say 90% of the time they want to sub the show because they want to play, which is fine, because I'd want to do the same thing. It's just a lot of times people get they kind of put up a wall because you can't have everyone come in because you just I tell people all this. I tell people this story all the time. When I got Ain't Too Proud, I had about 75 or so people ask me to come down and watch me play. 75. That's a lot of people. I mean, day after day after day, which is great because I would have all 75 come and watch because I'd want people to see what I do. I love my job, but you kind of have to put a limit because people want to come and actually sub. And like I said, I had 5 guys sub already, and I can't have you sub. But always reach back, and you're a very good networker.
Yeah, that's you have to.
Yes, you do. It's very important. If anybody wants to know about networking and how to get certain things and how to not necessarily how to get things, but how to be assertive, talk to this guy, because not only did he wind up becoming the drummer of the Ain't Too Proud tour that is out.
You should have applause right here. You should have like crowd applause happening right there.
He killed the when he came in to sub for me, he destroyed my set, meaning in a good way. I mean, I some other things I like to share. When people come in to sub or they want to sub and they learn the book, I say, I'm ready. I can tell within the first measure if they're ready or not, and if they're the right fit. Now, with you, as soon as you sat down and played the initial drum fill and the first measure, I'm like, okay, I can leave now. I can leave because I know that you have it, and you killed it. And when I always check with the dancers afterwards, and I come in the next day, and they're like, how was he? And they're like, you weren't here? I was like, no, I wasn't here. It's like, that's great. Oh, man, he's great, man. He sounded just like you, man. Oh, man, bring him back. That's when you have the right sub.
I appreciate that because you just don't know. Like, the only person that actually said something from the cast was Saint.
Yeah, him. Yeah, exactly. It was him.
Saint was like, hey, man, you do it. As a matter of fact, remember we met. I think I sat in your pit maybe like 3 or 4 times. And Saint was like, I got a good feeling about you. And so when I finally did play, he was like, yep, I knew it. But yeah.
He's honest. He tells you, he's like, that person, no, don't bring him back. That person, he's all right. I look to him, of course, and Kenny too, because Kenny's the man.
Man, listen.
But the dancers know. They can tell when somebody doesn't have it, and because they feel it. And the rest of the band feels it too. So you have to have the right vibe, and everything that you told me that led up to where we are right now are the reasons why you've been chosen, because you've done other things than Broadway. A lot of people come out of school and all they want to do is play Broadway, and I recommend that everyone play other types of music, because you'll have a great background and a great foundation to work from.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's I'm glad that they picked you out of the 75.
So I am, let me say, on your podcast, I am forever grateful. I will always be in your debt because I feel that, I do realize that Broadway touring is not Broadway, but I feel closer to my ultimate goal of playing Broadway, having my own chair. And that doesn't happen without you throwing my hat in the ring, and giving me the opportunity. And I, even on this side, I get, when you refer someone, your reputation is also on the line. So having the faith in me and the trust in me, a guy that you did not know, to come in and, just show what I could do, so I appreciate that. I wish I remembered more about my Broadway debut or subbing that show, But man, I was so locked into that book, and
Yeah, I was gonna ask you because I know what it was like for me starting my first show. What was it like for you being a sub?
um, I will say this: you made it a lot easier. You know, remember I came up on that Thursday, and I kind of set in Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday. In between the matinee and the evening show, you know, you heard me play the stuff. Um, but
Oh, before you go, what did you do? Tell the people that are listening to this, what did you do to prepare to sub at Ain't Too Proud?
well, first of all, I got the book. And if you remember, I brought the book every time I came into the pit, and I literally transcribed out the variances, things that you were doing versus what was in the book. And I asked a ton of questions, and I ate that book, and I ate the audio book, and I ate the video, the conductor's video every day, like every day ad nauseum, because whatever you eat, you regurgitate. And I that was the only thing I was doing. And mind you, during that time, I was still touring with Peebo and Avery and Anthony and Bobby. And every moment that I got that I wasn't on stage or in a rehearsal or programming, I was listening to the book. I was going through the book. I was listening to the cast recording. I was listening to the drum audio book. And I even pulled the audio off of the conductor's video, edited out the drums, realigned the drumless cover of the conductor's video just so that I can play with it, so that I could simulate being in the pit. Like, so I turned all the lights off in here. I just had one screen with Kenny on the screen with the click blaring. And I was sitting there trying to make sure that I understood his timing, understand the relationship between the book and how you're playing these songs, because the ink is one thing. And yes, you have to be accurate on the ink. But what's more important, particularly when you're dealing with a jukebox musical or music that's so iconic, like the Temptation music, is making sure that you nail the feel. Not the FILL, but the FEEL. And just making sure that I understood every measure of that book. It was that serious to me, because I never want to pull focus. And, you know, actors talk about that all the time. But as musicians, we can also pull focus if they're used to, and I come in and go, might be the same idea, but they're listening for a specific thing. The lighting director is listening for a specific thing. Everybody is cueing off of what Clayton did. No one cares that Q is on drums. I had to be Q Craddock that week. So, so for me, it was about doing my best Clayton Craddock imitation. So for me, it was that. It was ad nauseum, like just even when I didn't want to listen to it, I was listening to it.
That's exactly what you have to do, and that's exactly what I've done when I subbed at various shows over the years. You have to emulate the drummer that has the chair. Mm-hmm. There have been times where people have subbed for me, and they come in and they stink up the joint, and they're like, they didn't like what I brought to the table. It's like, no, you're not supposed to bring anything to the table.
Just eat from the table.
Yeah, the table's already there. Right. So, yes, you have to basically immerse yourself in the music, and you are just becoming one with that show. And for me, it takes me about 6 weeks in order to learn a show. Mm-hmm. The first 4, I'm just like, the first week, all I listen to is the recording. Mm-hmm. I listen to the pit recording, and that's all I listen to almost 24 hours a day, just to get it into my head. Yep. And I come from the school more about, memorization, because I remember when I was starting out playing drums, I used to put on records. Back when I was young, we had record players, those things. And I'd play the record, and I'd try to emulate the Jacksons Live or Kiss Alive 2 or some Slave record or Cameo or a Rush record. I would just try to listen to it, so I wouldn't have the music there. And I didn't really get into all that until I went to college, even though I didn't go to college for music. I studied business there, but I learned more about reading when I was in high school and in college. When I got out, I had, learning about charts. So it's for me, I found that same approach in order to become a sub valuable.
Mm-hmm.
When you immerse yourself in the music and you become one, like you said, you turn off the lights and you became me for a time period, and that showed when you actually wound up subbing for the show. So I appreciate all the work that you've done, and now you're on your own. You're going to do whatever you want to do to the book. You can start playing,
Nope.
17th notes if you felt like it.
Nope. That book is
Gonna
great.
make something up.
Nope. That book is great just the way it is. I'm just grateful to be on this journey, and what I won't do is have anybody turn it around and be like, what was that?
Exactly.
So the funny thing is, you talk about how things, I just found out that the resident director for the tour is another guy that I actually worked with. I was telling you about Warren Adams. He was the choreographer for Born for This. Well, Brian Harlan Brooks was his associate choreographer. And so I've worked with him in maybe about 4 or 5 cities on Born for This. And just coincidentally, he's the resident director for the tour. So I'm super excited about getting a chance to work with an old friend, So,
that's great.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
I'm excited. October can't get here fast enough, bro. Can't.
Couple of more questions.
Sure.
You have a list of endorsements. You are the king of endorsements. Did these endorsements did these endorsements come from when you played with Peabo Bryson, Anthony David, or just like tell me how they came about?
And I think it's an amalgamation of all of it. I think you have to be marketable. You kind of got to know what you're doing, right? But you also have to be personable. I think a lot of guys that go after endorsements, they go after them for the wrong reasons. And these guys, these artist reps, they, for nothing else, they know when a guy has the goods. They also know when a guy is going to be loyal. For me, I just shot my shot, man. I think with Pearl, a friend of mine who was playing with Pitbull at the time told the rep at the time at Pearl about me, and we had a conversation. And maybe a week later, I did everything that everyone else is supposed to do. You send in your stuff, your discography, your resume, some playing examples, and they like what they saw. Pearl at the time, they were doing it yes by committee. So at the time, my rep was on the West Coast, and there are a couple of guys that were headquartered there in Nashville, and it has to be a unanimous decision to bring a guy on. And after I sent my stuff in, it was maybe about a week, which is also odd, simply because that process can take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. So I got a yes in about a week. But prior to that, I think my first endorsement was with Sabian Symbols. That was 2006. And it's about once you meet these people, it's about being a human. I took an interest in who these people were. A lot the same way with you. When I talk to you, it's not drums. I'm asking about you. I'm asking about your family. I'm asking about how you are doing, with no other ulterior motive than to be a genuine person and to find out how my fellow human is doing. And I think a lot of people see these individuals for their position and what they can give them, and they forget that these people are human. And what I'm that's just my way. And I think when you take that and you couple it with my ability to play drums at a high level consistently, and the fact that I'm highly visible, and the fact that I can speak well for myself, when you pull all of those things together, I don't have to be Dennis Chambers. I can be myself and have a personality that people will want to sit down and have dinner with me, and we're fine. I think the thing to remember is be true to yourself and be honest about what it is that you want and go after that. And if one company doesn't give it to you, that does not mean that you hop to another company just to get it, simply because they all talk. Just like every music director or music contractor knows that guy ruined the show over there. So 9 times out of 10, he's not going to get a call from that one because they all know each other. All of these guys talk. And this is just about being genuine, man. Playing your butt off, doing all of those things that you need to do to present yourself as your own entity. Like when a company sees me, I pride myself on them looking at me and saying, that guy is going to be great whether we sign him or not. We might as well go ahead and ride this train and go wherever he is and support whatever he's doing, because as he elevates, he'll bring us along with us. Case in point, this Broadway tour will probably be the most extensive tour that I've ever been able to do in my life. I've had all of these companies that have been, supporting me throughout the time. So it's a joy for me to be able to say, hey, I'm getting ready to do this tour, and introduce them to the production team. And the production team is like, hey, can you supply Q with the stuff that he needs? Or, can we work out a deal and we'll put your name in a playbill? That's me being able to give back to this company. Over the next 2 or 3 years, there may be well close to maybe 500,000, 600,000 playbills printed. That's an exposure that you can't pay for. So I'm appreciative to them, but it's a partnership. It's not just giving me free gear, and it's not me just pubbing them. It's a mutual relationship. And when you understand it from that, it is a business thing. It is a relational thing. And it's how those things work together, as opposed to what it isn't is just a call to get free gear. There's a responsibility that comes along with that. And I think if you understand that, it becomes fairly simple. Look at people as humans and not just what they can do for you. And, you may see a different result than the one that you're getting.
Same thing applies when it comes to drummers on Broadway. Mm-hmm. We all know each other for the most part, and we hear about people trying to sub on our shows, and we know who's coming from a genuine place when they want to just see what we do, or they're just interested, or they're like, man, you should give me a gig subbing on your show because I'm good. I'm like, well, 74 other people are just as good as you.
Right.
So, you have to be cool to hang out with. And, it is about relationships. That's why you're on my podcast and you're doing a tour and everybody likes you and you get these gigs. And of course you have to be able to play. Mm-hmm. So all of those things matter. And I'm glad you shared that bit of advice, but I have another question.
Okay.
Probably the last, because we got to wrap this up soon. The question is, speaking of advice, what advice would you give young drummers who are interested in becoming a professional musician?
The biggest thing is that you got to love this thing, man. And you got to love it when it doesn't love you back. You have to be in unrelenting pursuit for what you want. And it has to come from a pure place, because in this business, we are met with a lot of no's. It only takes one yes, but you're met with a lot of no's. and you have to have a very strong sense of self-worth to be able to understand that although you are a musician, that is only a piece of who you are. And you can't let a great gig or the lack thereof define you as a person. I know for me, I struggled with that for a while, just trying to separate Q, the drummer, from Quinton Robinson, the person. So it's also about being flexible. Everything is not going to always go the way you want it to go. Backline may get messed up. You might not necessarily get to the hotel before sound check or anything like that. There are a myriad of things that can go wrong, but what you have to be able to do is still put on a great show. You know why? Because the person that's sitting in row 5, seat 3, paid to come and see you put on a show. And as a professional, you have a responsibility to give your all. And so it is about checking your ego as well. Like, if you want to be a musician, there are just certain things that you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to get rid of your ego. You're going to have to be correctable. You're going to have to be a great hang, and you're going to have to play your butt off. I don't know. I think this is a PG show, so
yeah, it's PG-13. It's my rating.
Yeah, so you play your butt off every time you get an opportunity, and also don't be afraid to meet people. I can't stress that enough. I went through my entire career just thinking, oh, if I do well on drums, people will find me. Yeah, that's true. But with the way social media and all of this stuff is set up now, you have to be your own voice. Hey, when I met Clayton, it was like, hey, man, I play drums. This is what I'm doing. You know, now I could still be sitting at home in Atlanta wishing I was playing a tour if I did not necessarily make my request known to Clayton that I was interested in doing what he's doing. And hey, man, are there any things that you can teach me? Is there anything that you can tell me? How do I get an inroads into this amazing 1% community of drummers, of musicians? And so that's what I would say. I would say be professional, be pliable, be personable, and be persistent.
4 P's from Quinton Robinson. And you normally go by Q, correct? People call you Q? Yep. Does anybody other than me call you Quinton? Do you prefer me to call you Q?
It doesn't matter.
No, yes you do. Like,
as long as you call. No, like I didn't grow up with a nickname, right?
Okay.
My dad, my last name is Robinson. So my dad's name was Rob. That was his nickname. So when I was, when you're in marching band, you get to have a nickname or whatever. So I was Lil Rob. I thought that was going to be my thing. And my dad was like, no, you got to find your own thing. You can't use my thing. You got to find your own identity. So he would not let me use Lil Rob. And when I got to high school, people were like, hey, Quinton, Q. Hey, Q. I was like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's good. Because right now, everyone's called Little Son.
Yeah.
little baby,
little mama.
Little child, little
mama dropped Judas from the train. I don't know. What?
So Q Robinson, speaking of I'm not speaking of anything. I'm just going to just mention this. You sent me a picture of something very beautiful the other day. And now it wasn't a picture of your offspring. I know you have a beautiful, beautiful family, but you sent me a picture of a beautiful piece of wood and brass, I think. Yeah. So tell me about this new thing. Tell me about your new snare drum.
All right. So this snare drum is made by Pro. It is an old snare drum, actually. It is a Steve Ferrone. Remember Steve Ferrone?
Yes, that's my favorite snare. What did you do differently to it?
I got in contact with the great John Aldridge. John Aldridge is the guy that does all of the etching and scroll work on all of the Ludwig snares. Um, and I got in contact with him, and I wanted to do something special with the snare simply because when I first moved to Atlanta, my car got broken into, and the snare that I had like that was stolen from me. So I spent the past 10 years looking for another one because Pearl discontinued it because Steve Ferrone no longer plays Pearl drums. And the snare just sounds super amazing. It's a great sounding snare. Up until I got that snare 10 years ago, I was specifically a wood guy. Like, you could not get me on a metal snare. That snare changed everything. So I spent the better part of 10 years, directly and indirectly looking for one. Long story short, I found one, and I wanted to do something that would mark the snare forever and would be a deterrent for anyone to try to steal it, because that is a one of one now. It has my logo on it, and it also has my company logo on it. So if you ever see that snare walking around Manhattan, New York, and I'm not carrying it, you can say, hey, somebody has. If it's not you or Andrew.
Yeah, I was about to say, if I have it.
Yeah, if it's not you or Andrew, you should definitely call NYPD and say, hey, somebody got my boy snare.
So is it something that Pearl is manufacturing for you, or you just had it etched on there?
I just had it customized on my own.
Nice.
Because I think another thing when you're talking about now I can change the book and do whatever. One of the things that you have on your show is you use a brass shell snare.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that I am doing what you're doing on the road. I want those people to come back from my show and book a flight to go to New York to hear your show. So I kind of feel as touring musicians, particularly on Broadway, what it's supposed to do is point people back to the mothership, right? So I want my sound to model yours. So I'm going to take that snare out with me because it is a brass shell snare. So
it's beautiful. Now do you have an endorsement with ProMark?
I do.
You have your own sticks. So before you go, tell my listeners about the products that you endorse and enjoy, and I saw that you did something recently on Instagram. Tell me more about the things and the products that you use and why.
Okay, so Pearl drums, simply because Pearl, in my opinion, makes the best drums on the planet. They've been doing it longer than most, and they do it better than everyone, in my opinion. Sabian cymbals, there's just something about the touch of a Sabian cymbal that I can't get around. It has been my sound for as longer than I can remember, and it will continue to be a part of my sound. ProMark drumsticks, which is a newer endorsement. I've only been with ProMark for going on 3 years now, but the consistency and the balance of the drumsticks, it just kind of feels like an extension of myself. I don't have to think about it. The weight is what it needs to be. The height is what it needs to be. I don't feel held back by my drumstick. What else? Oh, Remo drum heads. Only the biggest, the best drumhead company in the world. Artist microphones, Empire ears, drum dots, dampeners, Roland electronics, the list goes on and on. Motion Pro thrones, so I can sit through 12-hour texts without my back hurting at the end of the night.
I never heard of those thrones before. It's interesting.
Oh, we need to have a talk about that offline. It is definitely a back saver. Anytime I know I'm getting ready to do any type of tech, whether it be television or a show, I will ship that throne top with me simply because it is a back saver. So yeah, we definitely should talk about that. You're playing 8 shows a week. So I don't know why I thought we talked about that, but anyway, we'll get into it. Yeah, that kind of rounds it out. Pig Hawk cables, PreSonus studio gear. So yeah, I will say this about endorsements though. It's not just about the endorsement. You have to believe in the gear that you're playing. That's the integrity part of it. Not taking the deal just because it's given to you, If I was paying for this stuff, or if I didn't get a discount on this stuff, the same stuff that I just mentioned, I would probably still go to the music store and buy, simply because I believe in it. So you have to believe in the gear. I just wanted to piggyback off of that too. It's about the gear. It's about how the gear feels. When I close my eyes and I play air drums, everything that I'm playing on is what I imagine in my head. Is what I hear in my ears. And so, yeah, that's that. So those, in a nutshell, those are all of the endorsements that I have.
If people want to get in contact with you, how can they find you?
Easy. You can go to my website, www.imqrobinson.com. On Instagram and Twitter, it is @QGroovin. That's @QGROO. V as in Victor, I N as in Nancy. On Facebook, I have a fan page, which is Q Groovin Music, or my personal page, which is QJ Rob.
So yes, once again, ladies and gentlemen, Q Robinson. Let me say that one more time. He's played with Anthony David, Peabo Bryson, Bobby Brown, and he's on tour with Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. And he's a great person to know. You should hire this guy and get to know him, because he is the man.
Hey, listen, I'm unavailable for the next 2 years, so
Well, wait, it's not October yet.
Hey.
So until then, call this guy up. His number. No, I'm not going to give it. Reach out to him on. You're not on Twitter though, are you?
I am.
Okay.
It's the same as IG @QGroovin.
Okay. Reach out to the man. Thank you once again for being a part of this. You shared a lot of great information, and there's a lot more coming on Broadway Drumming 101. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Q Robinson.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for joining us. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please take a moment to give us a nice rating and review.